this day and age, we have a lot of misunderstanding as to genders and the roles each gender is meant to perform. So we want to start off by asking the simple question, men, how do we go about defining what a man is?
No, you start, big man.
I think, like you said, I think it depends on which angle you come from it. I think if we're talking about culturally, like as in black people or any other culture, we have different definitions of what a man is. But in 2019, in the Western society, this civilization that we live in now, it's like gender fluidity now is just more common. You can't really define a man with the traditional roles of what they were classed now as that toxic masculinity. You have to, like a man and a woman are the same now in terms of the same roles, and they're both meant to be strong, they're both meant to be reliable, they're both meant to be, I'd say, masculine traditionally, because again, women are encouraged now that you don't need a man in order for you to achieve the same things that back in the day you maybe needed a man, because traditionally in this country, men and women had their roles. Men would go to work and women would keep the house. But nowadays, women are just as much at work and men are just as much at home. But I think in black culture, we look at men as being strong, look at men as being reliable, have to be the breadwinner and as such. And I think it's now diluted our understanding of what men and women are. Living here, I think if you live back in Africa, it's maybe the roles are still there, still traditional.
Of course.
And you look down upon if you try and say, well, I don't need a man, because they might look at you and say, what's wrong with you? Or a man says, well, I'd rather stay at home and support my wife because she can get a better job than I can, you know? And I just feel like here in this country, it's difficult to define what a man is without being shot down. If you feel like, well, I'm a man, I need to be doing this and I need to be doing that, you know? And I think a man is a person who you can rely on. A man is a person who you can love. A man is a person who you can talk to. A man is everything. A man is everything. I don't think there's one definition of what a man is. A man is all of us, because there's some men who are not the same as others. Some men are weaker than other men. You know, some men are more intelligent than other men, but does that make a man less of a man if he can't lift up 50 kg more than the other man? Does it make him less of a man if he doesn't earn as much as another man? Do you know what I mean? But we do like to throw around this thing like you're not a real man because you don't come and pick up your kids every day. You're not a real man because you don't earn this much. I think it just depends on ourselves. We all define what a man is as men. We all have different ideas. So, because I'd say you might have a different idea to me about what a man is.
Yeah, do you know what? I won't say it's different. I won't say it's completely separate. But for me, it's like, it depends on, especially in this day and age, being a man is based on whatever circumstance you're in at times. Do you understand? Because as we all know, being obviously us three here, we're all black African men. We know what the definition of a man is in a black African household. You know what I mean? You're that, you know, you're just that guy. You're the one that when you make a decision, that's it. My thing is always, it's a case of my belief as time's gone on is depending on your circumstances, depending on your situation, you don't necessarily have to be, you know, the strongest ox out of everyone to be a man. You don't have to be, you know, the one that's the silent creeper that then does the damage at the end that makes you a man. Do you understand what I mean? But it just depends on you and how you carry yourself and what kind of respect you draw from other people. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because as a man, you have that thing, like, you know, in relationships, you have a female, you have a male. You obviously got the mother, you got the father. Usually it goes without saying, dad's never really saying nothing. But as soon as dad gets involved, kids like, mum will say, don't let me go and tell your dad. Do you get what I'm saying? Kid behaves. In some instances, the mum's the scary one, but more than anything in terms of them kind of situations, it's the man in it. So the definition of a man can be played around with in different circumstances, in different situations. But we all know this, the typical, what a man is, the picture. You gotta look like David. Not even David, sorry, I even used the wrong one. You gotta look like Goliath, sorry. That's the man. Do you understand? Whereas David wasn't the man. David was he was how can he come and challenge this big old ox? Do you know what I mean? But he defeated him. In them circumstances, David was the bigger man than what Goliath was, but it doesn't weigh up when you look at pictures or when you look at the general definition of what it's supposed to be. So it just depends. It actually depends. In love, you could be a man in a certain way. In war, you're a man in a different way. Do you understand? So there's no actual definition, but as obviously Junior's just pointed out here, it's a case where in the world we live in now, it's so gender neutral that defining what a man is, you could be scathed for that. People have a go at you if you go and say to a boy, this is what you're supposed to be. Because it's so gender neutral now. And for me, I don't, equality is equality, but you still have to be realistic. You still have to be able to paint the picture of what life really is. Do you understand what I mean? Without being too, patriarchal and saying, hey, you got to do everything. You got to make sure that your woman's doing this and that. That I don't agree with. But, it's one of them subjects nowadays that you just can't put your finger on without upsetting someone. Do you understand?
Just to add on to what my brother said, I think it's which culture you're talking to. It really depends who you're talking to. Because again, in the society we live in now, which is more westernized, what we say in public is different from what is said in private. And some cultures don't accept what is being said in wider society. So again, we might have this conversation and somebody watching it from one culture may look at it and think, well, I agree with what they're saying in terms of this what a man should be, but someone else might look at it and think, these people are backwards. Do you know what I mean? So I think it depends where you're coming from, so who you're talking to as well and who you're defining it to. So it's not really as much as, I don't think it's as important about what we feel, what a man is. It's who the person is receiving you, how they feel. Because again, I might look at myself as being a man because I am bigger than he is. But then somebody else looking at me might think, no, he's more of a man because he's taller than you. So it's just, it really depends on who's receiving you, in my opinion, as much as what it means to us individually. Because what it means to me is how I'll behave, but what it means to you might be completely different. Yeah.
No, 100%. That's a good point. So do you feel I feel like we've got to a stage where we've fallen into this kind of world where we're allowing other people to define the roles that we should be performing. And the reason that I say that, leading on to the female perspective, which we'll get shortly, is that it seems in a lot of situations, we want to be the identity that other people have of what a man should be. And I feel like that's the fundamental stumbling block for us being real men. Because in my opinion, a man is somebody who, first of all, knows who they are. Once you understand yourself as a person, you are able to truly be you. And when you're able to truly be yourself, you can then share with other people what it is that you're able to bring. I also feel that it's so important for us to stress the fact that a man needs to be responsible. And not only do they need to be responsible, they need to be accountable. I feel like you said, we've got to a situation now where you upset people with everything that you say, and you have to be careful of what you say. But at the same time, we need to re-educate men to understand that once you've done something, once you've made a decision, you first of all have to accept the decision that you've made, and secondly, be responsible for the consequences that follow. I don't want us to ever get into a situation where, because everything is so gender neutral, we're like, okay, there's no rules, there's no guideline. You have to be able to be accountable for the actions that you've made, and you have to be able to go forward and make decisions that will help solve that situation. So it's like, how do we go about making sure that we can tell people that it's alright to be themselves rather than falling for what other people believe that they should be. Because I'll say, for example, for women have their idea of what a man should be. And then if you feel like that's not the definition, then you're going to have a big problem with that woman in question, because they'll feel like you're not being the man that they need you to be. But does that make you less of a man?
No, do you know what it is? Like, in terms of what you're saying, as you're saying it, it just brings me back to a statement that I made probably like just a week ago. And it's a case of the society we live in now has made such a huge difference in terms of how people perceive one another and how people perceive individuals, or how people perceive actions and what your responsibilities are and whatnot. I made a statement that basically, like, there were so many, like, I remember growing up, I think my generation anyway, I'm thinking, so many leaders at one point that we could all stand and be like, right. Like, you look up to certain people. At that age, you wouldn't go up to them and say, yeah, I look up to you, because at the end of the day, you're a guy and whatever. But you'll look up to so many people and you're like, you're a leader. And when you see them now, you're thinking exactly what you said in terms of society kind of making them into who society wants them to be. Exactly. You're looking at them, you're thinking, right, what? Because of Instagram and because of social likes and following and stuff like that, you now don't want to be the guy that we perceived you to be at that point, and we all looked up to you. You're now a follower. You're now sheep. You're just a sheep now. So, to me, that makes you less of a man, but it doesn't mean you're not a man.
A man, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You're still a man, but you're just not, you don't know yourself, like you just said. You're not saying, do you know what? I know me. I know what I'm supposed to do. I know what my goals are. I know what my aspirations are, and I'm following through with that. Instead of doing that, you're following what someone else is doing because you think that's going to lead you to a point where you need to be because everyone likes that. Do you understand? And my thing is, if you're a man, personally, you shouldn't have to follow, in a sense. Yes, there's certain things, because we all have fathers. Do you understand? So if you're lucky enough to have your father around, you would naturally look up to that person. So there are certain general footsteps or certain guidelines that you would want to, that you take on regardless. It's just instilled in us. Like, we know there's certain things, especially being African men, there's certain things that are instilled in us. But as time goes on, you pick up certain things rather than seeing what's going on in society and seeing what's going on outside and focusing on other people and how they're living their lives. You need to be able to look at yourself and say, do you know what? This is what I like. This is what I'm about. These are the things that I want to leave as a legacy. This is who I want to be. And these are the things that I want my children to see. And I want them to be like, do you know what? Either whether it's daddy or even if it's a nephew, or uncle, blah, 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 blah. Do you understand what I mean? I want to follow that. I feel like that's what makes you as a man. And even on the opposite spectrum as a woman, that's what makes you. It's the legacy you leave at the end of the day. Because if you leave a rubbish legacy, no one's going to respect you. No one's going to respect you enough to say, yeah, I respect that man. No one's going to remember you. Yeah. There you go. That's another thing that makes people feel like they're less of a man. They feel like, I'm not a man because I have to ask for help.
Sad.
Do you understand what I mean? Like, or I'm not a man because I'm not getting it, as everyone will say, I'm not getting it. Meaning financially, meaning, I don't know, just having people around you in terms of being popular. I'm not a man because of that. But, like, if you don't ask for help, that doesn't make you, like, if you don't ask for, I personally feel, if you don't ask for help, how are you going to grow?
I agree.
So how do you become bigger than what you are now? There is no one definition of what a man should be. It's just everything around you within that space is what makes you who you are, because you're different, I'm different, you're different. You've got different walks of life. Do you know what I mean? And like you said, I'm a different type of man to what he is. But it is that, I don't know. What are you saying?
I agree with what you're saying, man. But the only issue that I have is don't you think it's more difficult nowadays to be a man
100%.
than what it was, I think, before. And I don't know whether it's, I think social pressure now is a lot greater for us than it was maybe before, because now obviously we're more focused on social. So the invention of social media hasn't helped, because now we're seeing a skewed picture of what masculinity is meant to be. Like, a lot of the time, if you go on social media, and just as an example, you see certain guys in terms of, let's say, for example, guys who are built as in bodybuilders, for example, and you just literally just taking a snapshot of their comments, and you see women saying, oh, that's a real man. Look at this guy. Look at this guy. and then you, for example, you see a guy who is small and starting out, you might see people laughing, and it was skewed now. It's difficult as a man to try and understand who you are when you're looking around you to get ideas on who you are. Because that's what we do now. We look at society, we all want to be part of society. Nobody wants to feel like, I don't matter. I don't mean anything. So we're going to use society to judge who we are.
That's what I was bringing up earlier in terms of this is my main issue in terms of us as men
not knowing who you are.
Not knowing who you are and not asking. Like, there's a difference with asking and seeing someone and being like, do you know what? Let me ask you how you got to this point. And there's a difference with seeing that social media side of things and seeing what's going on and trying to use that. You're not actually getting any factual information from that. You'll see that, like, people call that the highlight reel. Do you understand what I mean? Because you're only seeing what people want you to see. Do you understand?
Going off what you were just saying now about men having to go and ask other men for advice as to how to go about becoming a man. I feel in that very moment, that is when you become a man, because at that moment, you're able to decipher whether the information being given to you is the right thing for you to do. Because, there's certain situations in society where people will try and take advantage of people that are vulnerable. They don't really have anything around them, no one to support them, and they'll manipulate them to do things for their own personal benefit. So I think a big test for a man in this day and age is having the strength to be able to decipher what is right or wrong. Because it's easy to go for people. If you go and speak to men that are making a hell of a lot of money, but they're not doing it the way they should be doing it, and you go and seek advice, they could lead you down the similar path. And fine, that's cool. Maybe that's what you want for yourself. But at the end of the day, how are you testing yourself as a man if you're accepting information that isn't for your benefit?
But then this is where we're coming from in terms of everyone comes from somewhere. You come from home. Yeah. You've been taught at home what's right, what's wrong. It's up to you, like you said, to decipher when you go outside what's right and wrong. If you know that you're going to be at home, and I've always said this as a key thing, like, if you go home, and you know that someone's told you something outside, if you yourself know that you can't go to your mum and dad and say, look, this is what I want to do, and you know they're just going to come at you, then it's not the right thing to do. If you know that someone gives you information and says, this is how you make money, you invest in X, Y, Z, you can have that conversation with them. Whether they like it or not, you can have that conversation. Do you get what I'm saying? So then that kind of gives you that you use that. You don't have to go to them to find out, but you can tell yourself. You know yourself. Like you said earlier, if you don't know yourself, then you're not going to be able to decipher what's right or wrong because you don't know yourself. I know what's right for me and I know what's wrong for me. If I decide to go down the wrong path and make a decision, I know that because I chose to do that decision. Now, I can't blame someone that I've gone to ask because I may be looking up to the wrong people. That's because I don't know what's right or wrong for me. Do you understand? If I understand me, then I could just say, do you know what? I'm not going to go speak to my man that's doing X, Y, Z. I'm going to go talk to my man that I see wearing a suit going to work every day. I don't know what his background is. I don't know what he's doing away from that, but I'm going to speak to him because he looks like the guy that I think is doing the right thing. But you only find out if it's the right thing when you ask him that question. Because then he will tell you certain things that may click with you or may not click with you. You have a brain for a reason. Do you understand? We use what? Is it 20% of our brains? That's because we choose not to tap into it. Do you understand? We're not, as men, we're not foolish, but at times when things get tough, we decide to follow rather than say, do you know what? Let me ride this wave and then see where it's going to get me. Do you understand? We in essence like to take, especially now, I wouldn't say back in the day, nowadays especially, I feel like, especially with like the guys, the kids, the boys, the men that you see now, they want to take the easy road. They want that essence of, do you know what, they've got a family around them. And they want to now copy what the next guy's doing. They know it's not right, but to them, that's what makes them a man. Because my brethren's doing X, Y, Z and doing this, I'm going to be there because they all seem like the men. I'm on my own out here. Do you know what I'm saying? But because that person don't understand themselves, they don't want to ride that wave by themselves. They want to be with a group of people because then they feel like if we can all do something together, I'm a part of something. That means, this is cool. This is it. Like, this is what makes me the man that I need to be today. Not the man that I'm going to be in 5-10 years time. Because when you do that thing and something bad happens and you're not here, do you understand? And you go away for a little bit, you're going to be sitting there thinking, well, like, I shouldn't have done that. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, and maybe I should have done. That's when you start thinking, that's when you're riding the wave, because now you're away, you're now riding that wave because you're on your own. Why didn't you do that with your freedom? Do you get my point?
Yeah,
it's not scathing anyone, but it's just what happens. It's standard. It's what happens. And it's like, you know, like a lot of the kids today, because now I've generalized it to now. And a lot of the kids today, they lack that sense of self-belief. Do you understand? Or a lot of the guys, should I say, they lack that sense of self-belief. And because they lack that sense of self-belief, they feel that they need to get it from elsewhere. But the reason why they do that is because they don't actually talk to anyone.
You feel like there's a difference then between a woman's experience and a man's experience? Because isn't it the same? Where do we get our definition from for being a man? Where does that come from?
Yeah,
isn't that from our backgrounds, or is that from, what do we get it from society?
It's a good question, because I was actually going to lead on to that point and ask for Opeyemi's opinion as the woman on set, because I feel like women help to contribute when it comes to that definition, because long-term we're thinking, usually we want to settle down, have a family, be the man of the house. So when that situation arrives, we sometimes come to that definition of what we think the man of the house should be, depending on what we believe a woman wants a man to be. So how significant a role do women play in helping men define what the man of the house should be? Because in this day and age, you get a lot of women that, not a lot, sorry, I don't have any statistics, so that was all I to say. But in this day and age, you get women who are accepting of men doing all kinds of nonsense, but because they're that guy, they're flashy, they've got this vehicle, they've got this amount of money in front of them, it makes them feel like they've got a man, but have they got a man? Do you see what I'm saying?
That's actually a very good point. But like, when I think of a man, I think about a person who knows who they are. So when you know who you are, naturally you're going to have confidence, a level of confidence, because you know yourself. Even if you don't have the ability to do certain things, there's a level of confidence. And with that level of confidence, you know what is required of you. Do you know what I mean? As a being. And because you know what is required of you, you have expectations on yourself. So then with those expectations, you're able to drive yourself and put yourself in places, even if they're uncomfortable, where you can excel in, because what happens with that confidence, you've applied yourself. You know, for example, I'll use Gabriel for example. We had a conversation. Okay, cool. Let's go on. And it was something you said to me was, Ops, I know if I get this interview, I'm going to do well at it. But even though Gabriel doesn't have the experience, he doesn't have much knowledge, but he believed in himself.
I have knowledge.
So there's knowledge.
In that field. Let me be clear. In that specific field, but he was like, Ops, I know once I get this interview, I'm going to be good. And I was like, it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks of you. It's about really what you think of yourself. Ultimately, you need to know who you are, because then you won't be swayed or by social media. What's social media? How are you going to define who I am? I should already know who I am. And then because of how I define myself, you can start defining me. Do you get what I'm saying?
Is that not the same for women as well?
You can, absolutely. But when I think of a man, it's fundamental for a man to have that, because that's when you get a lot of issues. Stuff like a woman meeting too much expectations. The reason why a woman you don't understand, or you say that a woman has too high expectations, because you don't have any expectations of yourself. That's the reason why you say that a woman has high expectations. The reason why men may not go for certain jobs is because they don't believe in themselves. That's the reason why you haven't applied yourself. Do you get what I'm saying? So fundamentally, as the leader of your I think men should be leaders. I'm sorry, I do. I think men should be accountable. I think men should be responsible.
Most definitely.
When like you said,
Yeah. No, I agree. I completely.
Because we had this conversation before, and he took my words.
Sorry. Please continue.
Because I'm so passionate about this. I really am. Because I feel like it's being lost in the society that we're in. It's like, it's so funny because like I asked two of my colleagues turned friends this question, how do you define a man? And it's funny because they're both in very similar positions in terms that they are the breadwinners of their home, but they had completely different views. One was like, I don't necessarily feel like a man should be alpha, I am alpha too. Another one was like, I feel like a man should be the sole provider. Because if he's the sole provider, he's able to think about different ideas to provide for his home. But when a woman is earning certain money with him, he sees it as, oh, I can rely on her, so I don't need to think about alternatives. And I can completely understand where both of them are coming from. But when I think of a man and I think of his confidence, I think about, if you have confidence, then there comes, knowing your self-worth, self-love and self-respect. And when the way that a man carries himself, automatically you know how he feels about himself. Do you get what I mean? And just to add on to what you said about women adding to men and stuff like that, and even you mentioned mothers nurturing men as well. I don't think a man can necessarily reach his peak without a woman. Because when a woman is, you're birthed from your mother, she nurtures you up until a certain point. Some women do it, some mothers do it better than others, where another woman, once you get married, will now take over. And sometimes you may have to, help him get up to that point, but then also you allow him to exceed, because now you're in a position where you have no choice but to be responsible for your home. As the leader of the home, you no longer have the backing of your family, because now it's you that's leading your home. Do you know what I'm saying? So a woman's going to put you in a position where you where you have to make sacrifices, regardless of the position that it puts you in. You have to make sacrifices, because even when you don't want to make sacrifices, but in order to get a decent result, you have to make sacrifices. And I feel like a lot of men,
75%
are losing that. I do. And we, as a society, are giving excuses for men to behave a certain way.
100%. I couldn't agree.
And you know how we feel about excuses.
I know how we feel about excuses. 100%.
But we're giving excuses and it's okay. But it's not. Because it's like, why are we losing these values? These are fundamental values.
But don't you think it's because of where we live? Because we live in this country.
You have men who take care of their homes.
Yeah, but all of that is, don't you think it's being, at the moment, it's being phased out?
It's
whether
not.
You like it, but what you do in your household on your own, when nobody can see it, you can do it if you like. That's why there are people that indoctrinate their children to have certain views about certain people, because it's at home, it's in private. But you step out of your house and you try and have those type of views, it's not going to be met kindly. So even if I want to come out and be the alpha male and behave like an alpha male, as in take autonomy and do whatever I like because I'm a man, no one can tell me what I need to do. But when you step out into wider society and you try and live like that, you'll be shut down, because that's the world that we live in now. 30 years ago, it wasn't like that. So is it now? It's more, as I said, it's more difficult now to be that traditional idea of what a man is. As you said, a man has to,
I feel like
a man will grow with a woman. As you said, you're 100% right. But then, as they always say, behind every good man is a woman.
Yeah.
But nowadays, it's not necessarily behind, it's standing beside each other. Do you know what I mean? But in a way, the way society looks at it now, are they really wrong? I mean, a man and a woman should be together.
Yeah.
Like, because for my own example, I've made mistakes in my life, and life is difficult for me because of the certain choices that I've made. And without my girl beside me, it will be even harder. I look for her for as much support as she looks for me. She still considers me a man.
Yeah.
But for other people, it may not consider me a man because I'm not doing certain things that traditionally I should be doing.
Which is the circumstance.
Whether or not I'm trying to do whatever I'm trying to do. Society is not allowing me to fully realize my potential. And if I feel like I need help from my girl, does that make me any less of a man?
No. Everybody needs help. Who doesn't need help? And we're in relationships, you're there to help each other out. But I mean, as in like where it's consistent.
I can't speak. I can't speak on that because I don't.
Isn't this why we're in the situation that we're in now, where we now have this kind of movement where they're trying to get rid of that idea of masculinity, which they're now calling obviously toxic, because men lead the stats when it comes to suicide because of the pressures of having to be a man. For example, if a man feels like I can't do this and I'm going to need my girl to do this for me, because at the moment I can't do it, he will feel like I'm less of a man because society is going to look at me like, look at this weak guy. And that's where it causes many men to, for example, want to commit suicide.
It's still self-belief though. This is my, I feel like the whole thing with the in terms of what you're saying, you're like 100% right.
But again, we, in this society, in this country that we live in, this is the way it's going, because obviously the people in power, we're not in power. Most people with the views that we have here are not in power. The people in power are the ones saying it's okay for a 5-year-old to decide that he wants to be a girl today. If he wants to be a boy tomorrow, it's up to them. Now, again, it's because we live here. So where is it going to be in 30 years' time if this is how they're going now? In other places, Africa, Caribbean, Asia, they don't have those kind of views. So again, how are we going to stop this? The idea of masculinity that we have is more traditional to outside of the West. It used to be like that in the West 30, 40 years ago, but the West has now moved on from that. So nowadays, men can be the same as women. A man can be a woman can be a man. But only in other places like Africa, Caribbean, it's not the same. Africa, Caribbean is still traditional. Yeah. You understand? But so how are we going to stop it?
Do you know what? There's one key thing. There is one key thing. And it is true. Like, you know, they say you don't raise a child on your own. It takes a village to raise a child. Same way, it takes a village to make a man. Then it takes a village to make a woman. Now, especially in this day and age now, you know, you have a lot of relationships where there isn't the man or even there's no parents. Do you understand what I mean? So that was the key thing. I feel like that's one thing we miss out. Like I said, I was fortunate enough to have both parents.
I hear what you're saying, but I feel we have to be very careful with that because with saying that, we're creating an excuse.
Go on.
And the reason I say that is because I know so many situations where people have had both parents and these parents are giving their children everything, but they've still gone out and made their own decisions to follow a life which has led them to do things which they shouldn't have done. Now, we can't then turn around and say, what excuse are we going to give them? Because they had the home that we said they had in the beginning. For example, I know broken homes where you probably have just your mother and you've seen these guys come out of these situations without that father role model there and they're excelling. Fantastic examples. I feel like we need to accept responsibility for the decisions that we are making. I mean, having a family environment, I'm sure it has its benefits. I can't speak from that experience. I'm sure it has its benefits. But it has to come to a point where as you're growing up and learning in life, you're able to find the strength in yourself as a man to decide what is right and what is wrong.
Thank you so much for coming, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Akin and Junior. We had a very, very interesting discussion. And it was very enlightening, actually. Obviously, we weren't able to conclude because, you know, there isn't one definition of how a man should be. It's very open to interpretation, pretty much. So, yeah, thank you for tuning in. Please comment and subscribe.